Live streaming on a Monday. Santi, this is absolutely outrageous what's happened today in the world of St. Louis City SC.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy. I didn't think there was going to be an announcement today, but that's what the day brought. And now new things coming on Wednesday for the game against San Jose.
Ah, this is the kind of thing. All the planning for pods, all the prep, all goes out the window. You think things are bad, but you never really fully buy into this is the moment where it could all happen. I mean, we talked on Fallout about being up to nothing. Not, I mean, we went like pretty. I think we went harder than we usually do on hammering Carnell and the way he handled being up to nothing. We probably went a little deeper, digging into him a little more than we usually do. Come to find out, the phrase that I used today is it was the straw that broke the camel's back.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, I was thinking about it this morning after the announcement. Like, wow, we were talking about more specifics on the game, how it was managed, and then this happens.
I think we'll have time for a part two. I definitely think this is going to go just a pinch longer than my usual 15-minute midweek pod, but I think it's needed. A little therapy session, so to speak, a little stream of consciousness going on tonight. You into it?
Yes, let's do it.
All right. I've got I didn't put them in our usual spot, but I've got some show notes, but we'll just kind of fly by the seat of our pants and talking about this, I think.
All right.
There we go. All right. Welcome in, everyone. I'm not going to do a flyover wind down drink opening, but I do have a citywide light here that I'm going to need to get through this. So, cheers, everybody joining us on our live stream. Welcome in, everyone, to Flyover Footy. My name is Matt Baker. I'm joined by my special guest and friend in soccer, Santiago Beltran, for our midweek episode, which is as far from an ordinary midweek episode as possible. Breaking news, if you haven't seen it, Bradley Carnell is out as St. Louis City SC head coach. It escalated extremely quickly. We had a deep dive into all the problems we had in the specific Vancouver game. But as Santi and I were talking just a few minutes ago off air, it's never really real when this moment comes. And as bad as things have gotten for St. Louis City with 9 winless games, 3 points out of 27 recently, you never think it's going to get to this moment. You think there's an opportunity to turn things around. And as we're going to detail in depth, our thoughts, the history leading up to this, comments from Lutz and Diego at the press conference they had on Monday, the day they announced that Bradley Carnell was out as head coach, as well as where do we go from here. And if we have time, we'll probably preview a little bit of San Jose because they are our next opponent. We do have a midweek match that our players have to deal with in addition to everything that's going on here. Santi, how are you handling this day of absolute madness in the world of St. Louis City?
It was a crazy day, and I like teams go through that. I thought that someday is going to happen, whether it is this year, in a couple of seasons. At some point, City is gonna have a change in coaching. Just happened to be this second season, things were not going well, and to be honest, I thought maybe after Wednesday, if things don't go well, maybe that's when we will see some
Mm-hmm.
changes. But this morning, mid morning, I was surprised. I was getting ready to go to training and the pregame conference that the team had scheduled for 12:30, and then as I was leaving my house, started to see notifications and people messaging about it, and yeah, it escalated really quickly. I still went to the practice facility because I didn't see anything about the press conference being
Smart man.
canceled. So I said I'm gonna go see what's going on, and then the first thing I noticed when I get there is that Sam Dennehy is back on the field.
Whew.
So yeah, definitely Huge changes. Carnell is announced as no longer being with the team, and one of the first changes is seeing Sam Dennehy on the field, which based on and I'm sure you're gonna go more into it, but it looks like he's gonna be available for Wednesday, and it's eligible for selection.
One of the many topics we have to discuss tonight. Before we get into everything with Bradley Carnell, let's do a little bit of breaking news elsewhere, right? You mentioned Sam Dennehy, and we're going to get into the fact that he's back at training for St. Louis City under the watchful eye of interim manager and technical director John Hackworth. But we also had St. Louis City post a picture to their social media that contained an image of Cedric Teukert, who is now with City, but not eligible to play still. He's not eligible till July 18th, but he has joined the team in St. Louis for training activities. And he was in the weight room with City as Berkey was getting celebrated today on Monday. The other breaking news, and if there's one thing I love to do on Flyover, it's future-proof our pod for at least 24 hours, because you never really can. You never can really get to breaking news. But if you check the St. Louis City app, if you're watching on our live stream, if you're listening to this when you first wake up on Tuesday, check the St. Louis City app. We have a new player signing about to be announced. This was the same exact tease they had for Jake Girdwood-Reich. The City Red smoke is billowing, and an announcement is imminent, and it will be Marcel Harell. That is it's the prevailing thought. It's all but certain. The reports that he's already signed were a week and a half ago, and so if you're watching this on the live stream, you're pulling up your app now. If you're listening to it on the podcast, you might have already heard the news, and the rumors were that Harell was signed through 2028. And so he will be expected to be our third designated player, taking either Leuven or Berkey's spot. We'll have more on that on Thursday's show that Santi and I will also be doing probably around 8 a.m. I think we're going to do a special Independence Day edition to talk about Harell, talk about the San Jose match, and everything else. But we're here tonight to talk about Bradley Carnell. And before we go into the official announcement, actually, let's do the official announcement first. Let's go over what St. Louis City said and then get into our reactions. They announced at 10:30 a.m. on Monday, July 1st, that Bradley Carnell had departed St. Louis City SC to be replaced by John Hackworth, the technical director, as interim manager. This will be the second time Hackworth takes the lead of a St. Louis City side. Of course, he was the first coach of St. Louis City 2 back in 2022. The director of coaching, now turned technical director with an elevated title going into this year. Bradley Carnell was hired as St. Louis City's first manager in January 2022, a full year before St. Louis City started. During that inaugural campaign that we're all familiar with, he had a record of 17, 12, and 3. He helped us become the first expansion side to win a regular season conference, but he had some ups and downs. It was a great start. In fact, it was an amazing start, going 15, 8, and 2 in their first 25 games. But then after that, at the end of 2023, they were just 2, 4, and 3 in their final 9, including the playoffs. To start this year, he was 3, 7, and 10, with 1 win and 1 loss in CONCACAF Champions Cup, for a total of 6, 12, and 13 in their last 31 games played in all competitions. This juxtaposition is important to note, the overlap in some of these games, but you have this massively successful 15 wins in 25 games, and now you're looking at 6 wins in your last 31 games over the course of about a season and a half. That is a huge piece of this narrative. And most recently, as Diego Gigliani was very quick to point out in his press conference, general manager, president of St. Louis City, Diego Gigliani, that they're on a 9-game winless streak, taking just 3 points out of a possible 27. So that's the team that Bradley Carnell departs after 20 games played in 2024, and on July 1st of all times. Lutz in the press release rather, said that given Bradley's many contributions to the club, this was not an easy decision. Unfortunately, based on our year 2 results to date, we believe a coaching change is in the best interest of the club as we regroup and look to improve both our performance and results. Diego went on to thank Bradley for his time with the club, offering deepest gratitude. And Diego in the press conference also talked about how much Brad had really just grown to love St. Louis. And he really was as local as a guy could be without being from here, in the same sense that we think of Josh Yarrow, for instance. Mm-hmm. And how this was a place that Carnell had said multiple times that he could raise a family, he could stay here, he could build something here. And this coming on the heels of Bradley Carnell's contract extension, which was announced just 5 or 6 months ago, before the season started. So you have a lot of storylines all coming to a head at one time, with the records being what they are, with the transfer window opening in 17, 18 days, depending on when you're listening to this. And you have Bradley Carnell dealing with a very depleted roster. Uh, Santi, as you heard about that, as you hear, some of these stats and the way that the records have gone and the games have gone, and you just think through the timing of this all, what are some overall thoughts you have on the timing of the announcement, and just Carnell in general?
Yeah, no, the timing, as I mentioned, to me was a little bit of a surprise, just because I thought maybe San Jose playing against the last play team is kind of one of those make it or break it games. But at the same time, I think there is a lot of urgency. Only 14 games left, and the team is going to have to collect a lot of points. And probably management felt like this was the right time. I also mentioned today on our Twitter conversations that this was game number 20 of the season, which
Yeah.
we know the team breaks the season into five block games, games of blocks of 5 games. Oop.
Wash for a second, Santi. You were talking about the 5 block games. 5 game
Yeah,
block.
yeah. So we know the team breaks the season into blocks of 5 games, and this was at the end of the 4 block. If you look at blocks 1 and 2, they were okay. The team was still within playoff reach, but just the third block, just 4 points, still decent. Not too far from the playoff line, but just this last block, just 2 points in 5 games, and just besides the 9 game winless streak, also giving away a lot of points at home. So yeah, I think at some point, if the team didn't improve, the writing was on the wall. I I debated myself like, are they just gonna hold it and just think about all the injuries and
Mhm.
player movement, and maybe scratch this season, or hope for the best when the transfer window comes, knowing new players will come, or just start fresh as soon as you can, try to save as many points or collect as many points as you can in the 4 games before the transfer window, and then you have a real chance, because you could still come to July 18, and one of those things, oh, you need 25 points out of 27, that's almost out of reach. So yeah, I think they probably thought about it and said we need to make a change as soon as possible, have
Mhm.
somebody new, give the players some new motivations. And about Bradley Carnell, a great coach. Obviously, he led this team to that first year where the team had a great campaign. Obviously, the playoffs didn't go as expected, and after Leagues Cup, and I was looking at it today, Matt, and after Leagues Cup, August was decent. The team won two, lost one. September
Mhm.
even didn't win a lot of games, but had a 5 game undefeated streak. It was more towards October, and then the playoffs, where I think the things didn't work out, and the team lost a lot of games, and now started the season just with 3 wins in 19 games. But I think he was a good leader for the team, led that historic season, and always was very candid
Mhm.
with us when we went to the press conferences and asked him questions. And even I had a chance to talk to him a couple of times outside of the press conferences, and very good guy, a very good person, and I have a lot of respect for him. And but I understand this is a business, and any business, if things are not going well, you just have to find out the best solution to right the ship at the right time. And this is the change that was announced today.
Yeah, Diego said it very clearly, and Lutz reinforced it. Diego calling it a results-driven decision. Lutz said the same thing, results-driven decision. And so I'm separating myself today from Bradley Carnell, the person, and Bradley Carnell, the head coach in 2024, because up until, I mean, obviously coming into 2024, you had vastly different expectations for what St. Louis City would be doing. He was, like I said, signed in January 2022, and that's important to note because of the runway he had to help build this club right alongside Lutz and Hack. This right now, there's a narrative of this is a knee-jerk reaction because of the loss to Vancouver, which was one of the things that Lutz had said in the press conference, but it fits into the bigger picture of the downward spiral that had become St. Louis City's 2024 season. And you take the previous connections that Lutz and Bradley had because they knew each other beforehand. Lutz and Bradley were, I don't know if they were friends, I would say, but acquaintances. They knew each other before City. And so you're bringing in this manager handpicked to start up an expansion side who has this otherworldly first season. Yeah, he did drop off at the end of the first season when, you had teams figuring City style out. Maybe there was more tape on them. A lot of things you can analyze about the end of 2023 that we have, but he had a contract extension to start off 2024. And we were wondering at the time how much of the word extension really applies here, because we still weren't positive if Bradley Carnell was operating under a contract for 2024 or if he kind of signed a new one that was allowing him to continue coaching St. Louis City in proper. Regardless of what ended up happening there, the fact that he had the backing of Lutz, he had the backing of Carolyn Kindle, and he had the support to go in, continue to implement the style of play that was his bread and butter. He was recruited from the Red Bull system for a reason. And one thing that Lutz mentioned today is St. Louis City is not going to be changing their style of play. When talking about a new head coach, he said, we have a playing style and identity that will not be thrown out the window now. The high intensity pressing style will not change, and they'll look to a similar profile in a new head coach that they hire. And so I just wonder, it seems like it's more of the effectiveness of Bradley Carnell implementing that style that became more of the issue. This year, he had a little bit more of a focus on playing with the ball as opposed to just against it, trying to maneuver around teams figuring them out, offering a different change of pace, a different look compared to what they ended up having at the end of 2023. That has had varying levels of success. I think it has led to more draws, being less dangerous, being less brave in certain instances, and more trying to maybe overthink things at times. There's an obvious regression to the mean that has occurred this year in all of the stats, most notably goal scoring, goal creating actions. And so that Bradley Carnell's had to contend with those just as much as he's had to contend with injuries. One of the big stories are the injuries. And Lutz was also quick to point out in the press conference that they had injuries last season. They were without Klaus for half the season plus. They were without Leuven for a stretch, but they were able to figure it out. They were able to bounce back after the stat we loved to show about last year is it took 2 games in each of those instances. 2 games for Klaus to be out before we bounced back and figured out how to win. 2 games that Leuven was out before we bounced back and figured out how to win. And Lutz pointed specifically to the San Jose Earthquake game that we love to talk about from last year that saw the debut starts of Sam Dennehy, AZ Jackson, Akil Watts, and Josh Yarrow. And that crew, anchored by those 4, went on to have a 3-game win streak, I believe. It was a pretty consistent win streak. A quality of opponent aside, because you could make an argument that Toronto, Miami at the time wasn't high quality, even San Jose, but they got the job done. They beat the opponents in front of them, which is something this 2024 St. Louis City team hasn't been able to do. And so there are a lot of discussions like that can and should happen into how much of this is fair to Bradley Carnell. But Lutz was very, I think, clear that not only was it a very hard decision to make because of their relationship and desire to see Carnell succeed, but it seemed like as a leadership group, Lutz, Diego, and probably John Hackworth, that they saw this team was bleeding into 2024, and Bradley Carnell, they didn't have faith could stop the bleeding after this Vancouver Whitecaps game.
Yeah, and I think I noticed a few times after the end of games from the booth, I saw Diego and Lutz talking, and um, sometimes it was for a long periods of time after the games while we were doing the post game show. Didn't think much of it, but now that I go like all these news happen, I think go back to seeing them and kind of from afar seeing like the body language. Yeah, and Diego mentioned today, yeah, this has been is not like just one game. We have been looking at it and assessing what's going on and how we need to move forward. And yeah, just the results weren't there, and ended up with Bradley Carnell being dismissed, and now the team looking for something not not entirely new, just because John
Hmm.
Howard has been with the organization, but he has a lot of experience, and I think for the players, just seeing somebody with new ideas ahead of these 14 finals that are left, I think that will be a good source of motivation too, and try to salvage the season for sure. For sure.
And that is something Diego mentioned very clearly, is that they made this choice at the timing they did and had the leash that they did for Bradley Carnell, so that they could still salvage the season. Lutz started off the press conference by saying that their goal this season is to make the playoffs. And they now felt that that goal was in danger. And so when you think your goal is in danger, the faith in the person orchestrating that comes into question at the very least. And Vancouver offered a very interesting turning point of sorts in the season, because this was, you could easily argue, the absolute worst loss that St. Louis has had all season, not necessarily in their lack of goal scoring, but in their goal scoring and inability to hold a lead against a team that had been struggling, and Bradley Carnell even said last week, we know the exact style that they run.
Hmm.
Vanni Sartini is just not changing things up. We know exactly what they're going to throw at us. And he had a breath of confidence going into that game in what they were expecting. And when you go up 2-0, not to rehash that, but I think that the way that they lost was just that much more emphatic to, this is the moment that we have to make this move to be able to salvage our season. You could
Hmm.
give Carnell the rest of the season. You could give Carnell until League's Cup. But once you get to that point and you have 8-9 matches on the other side of League's Cup, if you continue the run of winless games, 3 points out of the last 27 chances, then you get into a point where it is not salvageable. And your goals for this season and uh, your potential look at what you can build upon from this season is down the drain. And I think that's one of the things that the more I think about it, the more I come to that realization, because a lot of the national pundits, those who work for MLS Season Pass, those who do some phenomenal writing, both for MLS Soccer, for Backheel, Joe Lowry, all these people are kind of miffed at the quickness with which this took place, not just for Bradley Carnell's sake, but in general, feeling like this was such an about face from a head coach who was coach of the year finalist last season, and who just signed a new contract extension, and who hadn't yet had a full second season under his belt as head coach. So it was very quickly orchestrated, very quick to pull the trigger. But the goal here was very clearly stated by Lutz and Diego, to salvage this season and provide some foundation to build upon for the future. Lutz has a 5-year plan that kind of has become a 6-year plan with
Hmm.
his own extension. And I see this just as much about Lutz not wanting to waste away everything
Right.
that they've kind of worked on and built to. He was also very clear to say that last season they overperformed, not just in the metrics we talked about a minute ago, but in resetting expectations going forward. Behind the scenes, there's a lot of talk about Lutz potentially, in not a, I really wish we hadn't won that much, but just saying this, this really hurt expectations for what this team should be growing into and how this will organically grow. By overshooting your expectations, by shooting for the moon so early, you have now writers saying we think St. Louis can finish third, fourth in the West going into the season. And you have situations like this, regressing to the mean in stats, not able to find form in some of your key players, not able to pull the most out of your players in various ways. We'll talk about the personnel conflicts in just a moment, but you have all these things that really hit all at once. And Bradley Carnell wasn't able to find his way out of it. He wasn't able to motivate the players, wasn't able to get what he needed from them to right the ship in any single semblance. And so you get to a point now where you're saying, how much longer are we going to let this go on before we do something drastic? And the answer was Vancouver.
Yeah, yeah. I think it was gonna happen sooner rather than later, unless the team started to win games. But I think just Vancouver and the way that game went was just the tip of the iceberg, and they decided to move on. It was interesting to hear that Lutz was asked if the team had won against Vancouver, if
Mhm.
Bradley Carnell will have kept his job, and his answer was yes, which to me was a big surprise.
I was shocked that he was willing to say that so
Hmm.
directly, and it came a question later than when Diego was talking about how long the decision had been brewing. Diego had
Hmm.
said the stretch goes back to 2023. What happens off and on the pitch, he said, it's results driven, but Diego said it's also believing in the process for more time and whether a reset is needed. And so this was a reset for them as much as it was trying to inject something fresh into the system to turn it around. And so Lutz's comment about if Brad had won against Vancouver, he would have kept his job. To me, it's not as cut and dry as that. You can't view that quote in isolation. It's more along the
True.
heels of it had been building since last season in what they were evaluating. So last season they didn't give it a second thought. So there's a lot of nuance to how you have to evaluate this. It's not that the end of last season came, they saw what had happened at the end of the season and they were concerned because they gave him a contract extension that wouldn't necessarily make sense. What ended up happening based on these quotes that they're saying is here in the last 2-3 months or so, the big picture was evaluated. They took that into context of what has started this season. And you don't see the end of 2023 and then figuring out what happened and then a rock solid start to 2024, or at least lessons learned. You see a continuing slide. And so at the time, there's obviously a thought of 2024 is going to be different. We can figure it out, and we're going to start strong, if not as strong as we did in 23. But instead, we had a slide. The back part of 23 is evaluated as a whole with what happened this year. And then it becomes a question for them of when do you hit that reset button? And if he had won against Vancouver, it's not that the reset button would have been put away and they would have been happy and said, okay, now you've won, you got 3 points in one game. We're good to go. Keep going. We'll talk at the end of the season. It's can you build consistency off of that? So it would have stayed him from his dismissal for a period of time. But if against San Jose we go right back to the well, we collapse, we fall apart, it probably would have happened after that. It's not an argument of every single game is make or break for his job at that point, but it's you need to show something that indicates to Lutz and Diego that you have what it takes to bring this team up from the depths that they've gone down to. And that's why I think Lutz mentioned the Vancouver game. And if he had won, he would stay and left. It's in context of the whole and how he would have shown faith that he can actually right the ship at this point in time and a reset's not needed.
Yeah, I think it will have just extended the timeline for the decision, but you never know if the team had, let's say, a win against Vancouver and goes to Colorado and maybe gets
Mm-hmm.
a draw. Maybe the thoughts about maybe making a change go away, because if you start collecting points and you don't separate anymore from 9 plays, maybe at that point you just say, okay, let's give him a chance. We have the transfer window. We have 3 new players coming, and with real chances of making the playoffs. Maybe give him until the end of the season, but we will never know the answer. It is what it is, and now the team starts for team finals, and a new era with John Hackworth in the meantime.
Yeah, and Lutz did say that they're in the market now for a new head coach, but because this decision was made so quickly and they were giving Bradley Carnell the ability to turn this around, they weren't actively recruiting head coaches. They weren't trying to replace him quickly. Which speaks to me about the long-term thought of this is you're wanting to give him as many opportunities as possible before the season gets lost. And so Lutz saying that they're now in the market because the decision was just made yesterday and today. So they don't have coaches in their back pocket. They don't have a short list yet. What they have is trust in John Hackworth as, quote, one of the first guys here. So they're going to take their time. They're going to make a short list. They're going to interview. Lutz did not promise anything on timelines. He didn't say we hope to have a new head coach by the end of the season. We hope to have one by super draft. Nothing like that. So expect this to be ongoing. Expect rumors to be flying around like none other at some point, where you're going to hear names floated around who have experience in high pressing systems. That's going to happen. But the other thing that Lutz had been saying in the press conference is about John Hackworth, and that there's a clear statement that John Hackworth, being the interim coach now, has their trust, has their confidence, and has the same goals. The goals are still to make the playoffs, and this was a move done to further that goal. St. Louis City is a goal-driven organization, and so you make moves to achieve your goals, and that's what this was. They believe Hackworth's the man to do that, and I think that plays into Hackworth's whole story of coming in, having familiarity with a lot of the players too. Indiana Vassilev, Chris Durkin from the U.S. Youth National Team. Like, a lot of these players know, love, and respect Hackworth. And Durkin has even talked about Hackworth being one of the reasons he was excited to join St. Louis City, because of that familiarity and the knowledge. And then looking back at the press conference, some of the other things that stuck out to me is Lutz was asked about the shallow roster, asked about the injuries, and whether that played into Carnell's ability to get the most out of the team he had available. And even comments about the fact that the guys on the field against Vancouver have so few goals scored between them. Lutz actually was saying that didn't play as much into what his expectations were for a Carnell-led team. And so I don't think it'll change with Hackworth, because Lutz pointed to last year, the things we talked about earlier, losing Klaus, Leuven, Nielsen, Alm for extended periods of time. A lot of the same names that we talk about missing this year were missing last year. We also had Nico Gioacchini last year, so I think it's not insincere for Lutz to be saying that, but I do think there are missing pieces that also put some of this blame onto Lutz for what he gave or did not give Bradley Carnell, the choice to not pay the potential $1 million transfer fee to get Cedric Teuchert months ago, may be playing into this, because you still never replaced Nico Gioacchini, and now Carnell doesn't get the opportunity to coach Teuchert. But that is what it is. And I think that plays into it a little bit. So I do want to make note on that. Carnell does have to coach the people that he has available, and he does have a history of pulling the most out of a depleted roster last year. But Lutz did point to that San Jose match, and he did note that we need players to step up. Tactically, Lutz said that they do get into good spaces, they get good chances, they just don't score. They need to be better organized. The things that happen when coaching changes occurs are new players need to step up. So guys who haven't really had an opportunity, like Nick Thorson, needs to continue to step up. Other guys who maybe have, slacked off might be the better, an okay term, or not really shown as much aggressiveness and competitiveness lately, they need to step up and play at a new level. Lutz ended his presser by not just reinforcing the belief in John Hackworth, but saying that they like to be underdogs and they won't change the structure that they want to play. And here's the quote that got me, that I want to dive right back into Carnell's management of the players. Lutz said aggression had, quote, become a bit softer, become a bit flatter. And Lutz expects a motivated team on Wednesday. And so, saying a lot without saying a lot, that become a bit softer, a bit flatter, that to me does kind of go back to the head coach a little more directly, and what you're able to get from your players, whether you talk about motivation, whether you talk about training and training style, which has come under a little bit of a microscope this year with some injuries that have occurred in training, and just overall personnel issues, or personnel, I don't even know the right word to describe it, just personnel things between the coach and the players. And now you can look back at Bradley Carnell's tenure and say, is there a line that could be drawn between players like Selmer Pedro, Owen O'Malley, Nicholas Dewar, Sam Dennehy, and AZ Jackson?
That's possible. That's possible. We obviously, all of those things are things that go behind closed doors. So
Yeah.
hard to know what happened, for example, between Sam and Bradley Carnell. But to me, the fact that he was with the team today, and yeah, Lutz mentioned, he's under contract, he's training, needs to continue working, and may be eligible for the next game. Just tells me that there was something there. We don't know exactly what it is, but yeah, I think all of those little things, if you add them up, maybe maybe there was some friction between Carnell and the rest of the players, and that contributed to this decision.
Yeah, the Sam Dennehy piece in particular, circling back to that, is fascinating, because the juxtaposition between the announcement this morning that Bradley Carnell had been dismissed, and then immediately seeing your tweet that Sam Dennehy was in training was remarkable. I was shocked at how quickly that changed. So I had to ask Lutz at the press conference about Sam Dennehy, if there was anything he could speak on about Dennery's relationship with Carnell, and if Sam is now eligible and training with the team going forward, what his status is. And while Lutz didn't comment on what happened between Carnell and Sam, obviously that's probably for the better. You want to know information, but at the same time, the fan base has a tendency to see some information be more bluntly released and then take a step back and say, "Ooh, I don't know if you really wanted to. I don't know if you really want to say that. That might have been best left unsaid." So Lutz was kind of careful to toe that line, but Lutz also said specifically that he still mentioned the trade and transfer talks. So it's not
Yeah,
like Sam Dennery's being pulled back completely and said, okay, he's with us until the end of the season. We might even try to sign him to a new contract. It's not that far. It's just
no,
the fact that, and Lutz said specifically, despite any transfer talks, Sam's a member of the team. He's training today. We saw him, and he's going to be training tomorrow, and he'll be available for selection. Beyond that, it's all up to John Hackworth as the interim manager on,
right.
has Sam showed enough in training? Is he fit after we don't know what his training regimen has looked like up until now in the past few weeks? So will he be fit to go? What does his form look like in training? All of that's for John Hackworth to evaluate as to whether he wants to name Sam Dennery to his match day roster for San Jose or let him have a start in one of these couple of games or going forward. But what we do know is that the approach with Sam now is he's under contract with St. Louis City, which means he's training and he'll be available for selection, which was a markedly different turn of events from Bradley Carnell led St. Louis City side that we just heard Sam was on having trade and transfer talks, and he was kind of removed entirely from training.
Yeah, and that was like 3 weeks ago or
Yeah.
so. And it was even Friday when Klaus was listed as questionable. I was
Mm.
even thinking like this could be a great moment to bring Sam back. Obviously, we don't know in what shape he is. I do know that he has been at the facility. I have seen him a couple of times before while we were there for press conferences or just for training. I saw
Mm-hmm.
him training at the gym, at least doing some fitness stuff. I don't know how much soccer he has been doing, but at least it crossed my mind. I was like, well, with the team so depleted, maybe at least have Sam on the trip and see if he can help with something. And then yeah, I was surprised when I got to the training facility this morning, and the first thing I see is Sam and Eniran. So yeah, that tells a lot, and we'll see. As you said, it doesn't guarantee that he will play or that he will stay with the team after the transfer window, but at least he's been given a chance to train and maybe show what he can do during this stretch the team is going through, especially right now, missing Joao Klaus and. The team needs as much help as it is available for these next 4 games before the transfer season comes in July 18.
Yeah, anytime we have to talk less about using up all of our short-term loans with guys like Brendan McSorley, it's for the better because we only have one match that he can play going forward, and we just need bodies at this point. So that will be a net positive, I think, to get Sam back on the field, which may go into perceptions of what the issue in the locker room was. We'll never truly know. I don't think, probably for the better, honestly,
Yeah,
because those things should stay behind closed doors for the better of the team. But Sam training with the team, Carnell's not here. I mean, that's a story in and of itself. Uh, in addition to Sam, one of the other interesting notes that Lutz made that we talked about a minute ago is the style of play is not changing. There was talk about whether it was the style of play that Bradley Carnell was coaching that was to blame, or if it was Bradley Carnell's implementation of sorts to that style. And I asked Lutz, that was one of the other questions I had to ask was this a Bradley Carnell implementation of the style? And what was it that you can really point to that led to your feeling in that wasn't allowing us to succeed? Because it's not just that we weren't scoring goals, but a lot of other phases of play were showing cracks, causing issues for prolonged periods of time that were frustrating fans. And while Lutz didn't drag Bradley Carnell at all, he even made a point of saying he's not going to disparage anything that he did. Lutz said that Brad did a great job last season and the implementation was really good. It was exceptional last year. Sometimes comes to moments where you don't perform well. Lutz said, but it wasn't a period of 2, 3, or 4 games. It was a longer way of seeing that, where we had the feeling that things are not going our way. We don't look as good as we did last year. We don't create as many high scoring games as last year. We don't create enough good chances. We concede too many chances for the opponent. So there are a lot of things, both phases, that we looked at that were different from last year. Lutz went on to say, not every year will be the same, but at the end of the day, we have a goal to go for, and we're not a team. Something I think St. Louis stands for. We want to fight and grind, and we still believe in us. We want to make the playoffs, and it was for us to make that decision. So I bring that up right now because going forward with John Hackworth, expect a similar style. Expect John Hackworth to implement the style that he's been overseeing as the director of coaching, the technical director, who his role has been more so to align all of the different organizations within City 2, the academy, making sure that there's one city style of play. And he's been implementing that up and down the board. So now to pull him into the first team from a transition of how the style of play is going to be implemented, I would probably bet it's going to be a pretty seamless transition, wouldn't you think?
Yeah, it should be. And you mentioned he has familiarity with players like Chris Dorkin and Indiana Vasilev. The other thing we need to remember is that he was CD2's coach in
Mm-hmm.
2022, so he also knows some of the players like Akil Watts, Kyle Heaver, Josh Jarrow. I'm sure he most of that roster he was responsible for assembling, and maybe even some of the current CD2 roster. Even some of those players stayed with the team. So the familiarity is there. The playing styles across the different teams, we know they are similar. So it's not something new for him. CD2 played that style in 2022 when
Yep.
he was the head coach, and last year he was Bradley Carnell's assistant. And I think he also had a he between him being Carnell's assistant and what Carnell did to lead the team. I think he had a good. You could tell that he was part of that success. So he knows what he needs to do to motivate the team and get it ready for this 14 game stretch, especially the these first 4 games. To me,
Mm-hmm.
the 4 games before the transfer window are really important. The team needs to collect as many points as possible, because otherwise you will get to July 18 and you will be in a very tough position to make the playoffs.
Lutz and Diego also referenced the leadership committee of St. Louis City. The veterans need to step up. Everybody needs to own what happened so far during the season. It ultimately fell on Bradley Carnell's shoulders to take the brunt of it, but this is this is something that the players have to own as well in how they're performing. So now Hackworth, in trying to get the most out of the players, we hope that where we want to see a new manager bounce, the players have to own up to that as well and help cause that. The team that we're playing has their own new manager bounce that they're still trying to work towards, with Luchi Gonzalez having been let go from the San Jose Earthquakes last week. Their first match was a 3-0 loss. So new manager bounces aren't guaranteed. That's something we have to come to grips with over the next couple of days leading into the San Jose match. But I do look for John Hackworth to be able to get a little more out of the players, for them to fight for Hackworth, because Hack is very much a guy that everybody enjoys. They respect. They like playing for. And he takes over with a history of MLS with the Philadelphia Union, leading City 2 in 22, and so much familiarity with this system. He doesn't have the reinforcements yet, so he'll have to deal with that same depleted roster, maybe adding in Sam Dennehy. But the new arrivals, Cedric Teuchert, who is training with St. Louis City now, Jake Erdwood Reich, who we don't think has arrived yet, and if you're listening to this on Tuesday, July 2nd, new signing Marcel Hartel will arrive for the SKC game. And I wonder if, I assume that the same expectation that Bradley Carnell set after Vancouver still applies, that they're trying to get these guys ready as quickly as possible to hit the ground running at that time. I don't think any of that expectation should change. Carnell maybe was a little bit more bluntly honest in how now was a gap bridging moment than
Right.
I think. But the overall concept is you want to get Hartel in as quick as possible. You want to get Cedric Teuchert in as quick as possible, because those are the difference makers that will take the field for St. Louis, starting possibly with SKC, but definitely after Leagues Cup. And Lutz did reference the new signings making an impact, getting them up to speed as quick as possible. Any final
Yeah.
words on Bradley Carnell?
No, no, Matt. I think we have talked enough. Again, it's a new clean slate for everybody. Hopefully, players will be motivated on Wednesday. But you were mentioning getting everybody up to speed. It'll be great if the new players are available for that July 20th game against Sporting KC, just because they are also right there on the table. They also basically they are in a similar situation. They need to get as many points as possible, and I think that July 20th game is going to be obviously these clásicos, these derbies are always special, but I think this one is going to be extra special because it could come to be the game where whoever loses maybe gets out of playoff contention.
And it's also funny to juxtapose what will be that July 20th game, a team from St. Louis that has an interim manager because their head coach had only won 3 games out of 20, 9 winless. And you're going against the institution of Kansas and Peter Vermes, who has withstood 11 games winless, has withstood this season 7 losses in a row, 4 total wins, and he's still standing strong. So there's juxtaposition galore there of a team that desperately wants to continue to meet their goals in the near and long term versus someone who has just earned himself a role and is being given the longest leash possible in all of Major League Soccer. That'll be a fun matchup. But before we get to that point, let's look a little bit at San Jose. You want to do that?
Let's do it.
We did part 1 on our Fallout show, so take a peek back to hear some of the players, where the teams are in the standings. You don't really need to know too much other than we are 2 of the 3 worst teams in the West right now. And we are playing a team that has a new manager in Luchi Gonzalez. They are themselves on an 8-game winless streak. So there's a lot going wrong with San Jose that makes this a really good opportunity. Some quick stats in how this San Jose team matches up, looking at them for Wednesday. They have the second lowest possession in MLS. So this is a team that doesn't want anything to do with possessing the ball. They are pretty poor at keeping possession, but they do it in a little bit of a different way than St. Louis, as we'll talk about in a second. Defensively, this team has the worst save percentage in the league at 57%. They have the worst goals against with 54. The next closest is SKC with 44. And they have a goal against per 90 of 2.7. St. Louis has a goal against per 90 of 1.75. So we allow kind of just approaching 2 goals a game. San Jose allows nearly 3 goals every game. A big reason for this is their goalkeeping situation. Daniel, one of the top 3 goalkeepers last year. I think he was a finalist for goalkeeper of the year. He had hamstring surgery in March. And so he's been out for an extended period of time. He will be out until probably August or September. And so William Yarborough is their keeper. They signed him from Colorado, and he has been abysmal. The defensive work on this team is where they're vulnerable, but their offense, Santi, isn't bad. Post-shot expected goals, so looking at XG after they get the shot off and taking some of that extra data into account, is 3rd in MLS. They're 7th in MLS in non-penalty XG. So this team's actually fairly good at creating chances and goal scoring. They're not great at finishing necessarily, but the XG is there. It's on the defensive side where this team is just full of holes. So that creates kind of an interesting dynamic against a team that can't score going up against a team that allows the most goals and a team that's been pretty good defensively, but a team in San Jose that is good at creating chances. So you've got both ends of the stick going here. Style-wise, San Jose, they will not carry the ball. They're 21st in carries, 26th in carrying into the final third, and 27th in carrying into the penalty area. They will work the field wide. They'll get it to the wide areas. They love to attack from set pieces. They attack down the right, so look for the ball to spray through their wide right areas. So our left back is going to be an interesting call on who we run in this game. They like to attack through the middle. They get the ball to Christian Espinoza a whole lot, and they take a ton of shots. They won't possess the ball in the attacking half. They'll possess the ball a little bit in their defensive half, looking to create that quick, direct movement. But it's very much a team that I think, if I were to guess, Santi, St. Louis is going to end up leading the possession battle in this one.
Yeah, just because, as you mentioned, they don't possess the ball, and we have seen it when St. Louis goes against teams that are known for that. St. Louis is going to have to work more with the ball, and that's something that Carnell was implementing this year, being better when the team had the ball instead of relying all the time on the press and on long balls. So I think the team by now it's is used to doing that if it needs to. But yeah, it's just gonna be one of those games. Like San Jose is also, by giving the ball so much to St. Louis, is gonna be waiting for a mistake. So St. Louis just has to be careful, and hopefully we have a motivated team, and the team keeps showing what has shown at times when it has to work with the ball and create chances out of having possession instead of relying on recovering the ball on the final third.
Yeah, if you want a comparison, San Jose is near the New York Red Bulls in sequence time and directness to goal with the ball, but both much less than City. If you're looking for how this game is going to play out, the differences in where the touches come is important to think about for these two teams. For San Jose, 35% of their touches come in the defensive third and only 23% in the final third. For St. Louis, it's kind of the opposite. 29% of their touches in the defensive third, 30% in their final third. They're much more even in where they're willing to touch the ball and possess the ball. San Jose, they have those a significant amount of the touches in the defensive third and up to the mid, but they really don't have very many touches in the final third. This is going to be a transition-based game, counterattacking game. Like I said, I think St. Louis ends up with a higher possession in this, but I also expect the ball to be controlled a lot in the St. Louis attacking half. I think this stacks up well for St. Louis to spend a lot of time with the ball, both in
Mm-hmm.
volume of chances they create on the counter, but also I think their high press is going to be a little has a chance to be incredibly effective in this match. When you have a San Jose team that touches the ball so many times, greater than 70% of the time in the defensive and middle third, you have a propensity to be able to high press in those areas. And so as long as St. Louis, it seems cliche at this point, but the real problem St. Louis has is getting beat on the counter with their center backs high up on the field. How many times did that happen? Against Vancouver, it happened.
Yeah.
And I know personnel wise, we look for Parker and Yarrow to be back, or Parker and somebody else, Parker and Nowinski maybe, but not Anthony Marcanic at center back. Regardless, I think the ball is spending a large amount of time in our attacking half. I don't want to see us possess the ball a whole lot, but I do think that this high press is going to be pretty effective on the opposite end. San Jose, 24th in the league in PPDA. There's a greater than 5 pass difference. Passes per defensive action, the number that looks at how many passes a team allows the opposition to make before they make a defensive move. San Jose does not press. That's what this stat indicates. It's, are you a pressing team or not? And San Jose is not. They're not dangerous when they do initiate a high press. They've got the 5th fewest high press, high turnover shot ending sequences, and they are absolute last in goal ending sequences from them as well. This is not a team that's effective when they press. That's not a team that's going to press. So you need to have just a tactically sound St. Louis City side. They need to be much more cohesive than they have been in the past few games in these moments, in these transitions. And more than anything, I think right now they need Knut Thorson to continue his run of form.
Yeah, it's great that he finally scored, and that will give him confidence. And Matt, I just remember last year's game against San Jose at City Park that City was able to get some turnovers when San Jose had the ball on the final third. So that's something to keep an eye on for this game too.
100%. All right, so Santi, I think that's about it for us tonight. Probably the biggest midweek episode we've ever done. Maybe the biggest I hope we ever do, because you don't want to be in situations where you're having to have these emergency long discussions, these last second pods to talk about this kind of news. I'd rather just it be business as usual, talking about another win. So to recap, folks, Bradley Carnell out as St. Louis City manager. John Hackworth is the interim manager for the time being. We expect that to go possibly till the end of the season, as the new coaching search is really just beginning in earnest. Other important items to remember, though, if you're thinking positivity going forward, not just playing the worst team in MLS on Wednesday at home is a good chance for your new manager bounce, but Cedric Teuchert is training, is in the facility with St. Louis City. We saw him in some images posted by the club's social media. And like I said earlier, if you're listening to this on Tuesday, Marcel Harell is the new signing for St. Louis City SC. Put that out in the world right now. The City Red smoke has been lit in the app. It's as official as I need it to be right now. Look forward to all of these because those are difference makers for St. Louis City. Both will be available along with Jake Reich after July 18th. Any final words? Oh, before we go, actually, one thing I do want to say is I tweeted this out, but I feel like I overlooked it earlier and I did not mean to. Wishing Bradley Carnell the best in the future. You know, I mentioned earlier briefly, I think that there's a difference between Bradley Carnell, the person, and the manager. You have feelings on the manager side, positive or negative, and how he handled the team, tactical decisions, substitutions, all of those things that go on. But Bradley Carnell as a person has never been anything but stand up. I mean, he's treated both of us with an incredible amount of respect. He always appreciates, says hi, friendly. And we know how much he enjoyed St. Louis, how much he loved St. Louis. He brought his dog to a press conference one time.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's as good of a person as you could ask for to be your first manager in the history of your club. He'll forever go down in the history books as the guy who led us to a Western Conference regular season championship, first place, whatever you want to call it, at the end of your expansion season. So we wish him the best. I know he's going to land on his feet, and nothing but the best for Brad.
Yeah, best wishes for Bradley Carnell. And Matt, somebody was asking, Jacob Ellis was asking if new players are able to practice with the team now. The answer is yes.
Mm-hmm.
Now that Cedric Toihar is here, we'll probably see him training with the team. I don't know, maybe he will be doing some fitness work, but yeah, he will be at the facility, and at some point we will see him with his teammates. Same thing with Jake Wright. Whenever he arrives, he will be able to start training with the team. It's just that they won't be able to play until after July 18 when the transfer window starts.
That's right. All right. Thank you so much for joining us. If you're in our live stream watching us tonight, sticking with us on a Monday evening of this monumental day in St. Louis City SC history, we really appreciate it. If you're listening to us on our podcast, as always, extremely appreciate the download. Thank you so much for listening to us. Hit us up on social media with any feedback you have. We love to hear it. Love to continue the conversation with what you guys want to hear and hear us talk about. So for Santiago Beltran, my name is Matt Baker. Thank you for joining us on this midweek edition of Flyover Footy, looking ahead to the San Jose Earthquake, but also diving deep into the dismissal of Bradley Carnell as St. Louis City SC manager.
Vamos, City.
All right. Thanks, everybody, for joining us on the live stream. I think this was our biggest one yet for obvious reasons. I think everybody's wanting to hear as much detail and information as possible, but it means a lot to tune into us ahead of the USMNT game, which we finished right as that game should be about to kick off. So
perfect timing.
Hoping for a good result for the USMNT, hoping they move on from group stage. I know Uruguay has the same lineup that they ran out last time, so it should be a good one.
Oof.
The Timothy Whale-less USMNT side.
There you go.
All right, Santi. Good to talk to you. Good to talk to you, everybody.